The desert night had a silence that felt alive. Wind slid across dry stones like a whisper. The stars above seemed close enough to touch, each one a silver pin in a velvet cloth. Evan Parker stood beside the small campfire he had built hours ago. The flames were low now, breathing soft orange light on his boots and the sand. He liked this lonely place outside Flagstaff, far from city noise. His job as a construction surveyor filled his days with grinding machines and shouting crews. Out here there was only the sound of his own heart and the steady hum of the earth cooling after a long day of sun. He had come to watch the meteor shower that the radio said would streak across the sky. He wanted a night to think, to breathe, to remember that life was more than steel beams and schedules. Evan tipped his head back and let his eyes drift through the infinite black. He tried to name the constellations the way his father had taught him when he was a boy. Orion's belt, the bright dog star, the curve of the Dipper. He smiled faintly at the memories, his father's rough voice, the smell of campfire smoke on an old jacket. Then the night split open. A light flashed across the sky, so bright it turned the sand pale white. At first he thought it was a big meteor, maybe one of the famous fireballs people sometimes caught on camera. But this was different. The streak glowed green, almost liquid in color, and it didn't fall like a rock. It moved with purpose, sliding sideways, correcting its path as if it were alive. His breath caught. The object slowed, dipped lower, and for a heartbeat he thought he heard a low, vibrating hum. Then it vanished behind a distant ridge far across the dark desert floor. A sharp flash followed, white, then violet, and then nothing but stars again. Evan's mind raced. No plane he knew could move like that. A drone? A military test? He felt a tug of excitement, the kind that lives halfway between fear and wonder. He grabbed his flashlight, stuffed his phone and water bottle into his backpack, and kicked sand onto the fire until the last ember died. The hike toward the ridge took longer than he expected. The moon was thin, barely a silver blade, and the ground was a maze of rock and scrub. But the faint smell of something electrical, like hot metal and rain, guided him forward. Each step echoed in the cold night. He felt alive, as if the stars themselves watched him. When he finally reached the rise, he saw a soft green glow ahead, pulsing against the shadows. It came from a shallow canyon just beyond a line of black boulders. Heart-hammering, he slid down a slope of sand and peered around a jagged rock. His breath stopped. In the center of the canyon rested a craft that no human hands had built. Sleek as polished stone, it gleamed with shifting colors. Emerald, silver, deep blue, as if the metal were alive. Thin steam rose from vents along its sides, and the air around it trembled with quiet energy. It was beautiful and frightening at once, like a creature from another ocean. Then he saw movement. A tall figure stepped from behind the ship, armored from shoulders to boots in plates that caught the green light. The helmet was off. The figure's skin shimmered a deep, iridescent blue like the sky before dawn. Long dark hair spilled down her back. Her eyes, golden and sharp, found him instantly. Evan froze. The stranger held a broken spear in one hand, the metal tip cracked and sparking faintly. She looked wounded. One shoulder plate hung loose, and a faint trail of something, blood, glowed faintly across her arm. For a long, endless second, they simply stared at each other. Evan felt his pulse roar in his ears. He raised his hands slowly, palms open, hoping she understood the sign of peace. The warrior tilted her head. Her golden eyes narrowed, then softened. She stepped forward into the moonlight. Up close, her face was both fierce and strangely gentle, the lines of her cheekbones catching the glow from the ship. She spoke first, a sound like music and thunder mixed. Evan couldn't understand a word, but the tone was not hostile. She tapped her chest and said something that sounded like Rin or Rian. Evan, he said quietly, pointing to himself. His voice felt small against the silent stars. She studied him, then nodded once, a motion both regal and cautious. Her eyes flicked to the water bottle clipped to his pack. He followed her gaze and unhooked it, offering it with a slow, careful movement. Rin accepted, lifting it to her lips. She drank with quick, efficient sips, then exhaled a sound that might have been relief. She gave the bottle back and placed a hand flat against her own chest. A silent thank you, or maybe a warrior's salute. The canyon wind picked up, cold and sharp. Evan noticed her slight shiver. He pulled his spare blanket from the pack and held it out. For a moment she hesitated, then took it and wrapped it across her shoulders. The green light from the ship painted soft shadows across her face. They stood together in silence. The crash of the world outside, the city, the endless human noise felt far away. Here there was only the slow hiss of cooling metal, the smell of sand and ozone, and two beings sharing a thin blanket of trust. Evan sat on a nearby rock. He gestured for her to join him. Rin lowered herself gracefully, keeping her spear across her knees. She spoke again, a quiet string of words like falling water. He couldn't understand, but her voice carried a note of calm curiosity. He answered anyway, telling her about the desert, about stars that looked like frozen sparks, about how small and huge a person could feel out here. She tilted her head, as if the rhythm of his words meant more than their meaning. Above them, the sky stretched endless and wild. Evan felt the strange certainty that his life had just shifted. Like the earth after a hidden fault finally moves, whatever happened next, the night would never leave him. The canyon air grew colder as the night deepened. A faint wind curled through the rocks and carried the smell of iron and distant rain. Evan pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders and studied the strange warrior beside him. She sat upright on the stone, the broken spear resting across her knees like a sleeping animal. Her name, at least the sound she made when pointing to herself, was Rin. Evan tested the name under his breath, soft enough that it wouldn't break the stillness. Rin. She glanced at him when she heard it, golden eyes catching a sliver of moonlight. A quiet nod told him he had said it almost right. The small fire he had lit with dry brush crackled and hissed. Its warmth stretched across the canyon floor in trembling orange patterns. Evan noticed how carefully Rin watched the flames, as if fire was either a rare wonder or a dangerous beast. Her armor glinted in rhythm with the sparks. He wanted to speak, but felt words were clumsy things next to this silent night. So he began in simple pieces, his voice low and steady. "I come here when I need to breathe," he said. Rin tilted her head, clearly not understanding, but she leaned slightly closer as if the tone mattered more than the meaning. To make himself clearer, Evan touched his chest and drew a circle in the air, a sign of his heart in the wide-open sky. Rin mirrored the motion with slow grace. Then she said a short phrase, soft and musical. He had no idea what it meant, but it carried warmth. A long pause stretched between them, filled only by the song of the desert, distant coyotes, the occasional rustle of a night bird, and the low hum from her ship. Evan noticed the soft glow of its surface pulsing like a heartbeat, steady and alive. Rin shifted slightly, and a faint metallic sound came from her shoulder plate. Evan saw the smear of light along her arm, a thin line of glowing blue where she had been wounded. He frowned and reached toward his pack. "Let me help," he said, pulling out a small first aid kit. She tensed, her golden eyes sharp again. He froze, showing empty hands. Slowly he pointed to the kit, then to her arm, then back to himself. Rin studied him for a breath that felt like a full minute. Finally, she gave a tiny nod. Evan tore open a sterile wipe and gently cleaned the glowing wound. The liquid shimmered under the light, neither blood nor anything he recognized. Rin watched him carefully but did not pull away. When he finished, he wrapped the cut in a strip of gauze. The moment felt fragile and huge. When he looked up, she was watching him with a strange softness. She placed her palm briefly against his hand, a silent thank you, before letting it fall. That single touch sent a quiet shiver through him, not of fear but of connection. The wind picked up again, sharp and dry. Evan stood and gathered more branches for the fire. He moved carefully, not wanting to startle her. When he returned, Rin had tilted her head back to watch the sky. Her hair caught the starlight like strands of midnight glass. He sat beside her. "Those are stars," he said, pointing upward. "Your stars might be different." She followed his gesture, then lifted a finger to trace a pattern of her own in the dark, 4 quick points and a sweeping line. She spoke a word, low and clear. It might have been the name of a constellation in her language. Evan repeated the sound as best he could. Rin gave the faintest smile, a quick flash of teeth in the firelight. They spent long minutes like that, exchanging gestures, naming stars in 2 tongues that could not meet, but still understood each other. As the night grew colder, Rin's shiver became more visible. Evan unrolled his larger blanket and spread it across the stone between them. He tapped it gently, offering. For a heartbeat, she hesitated, eyes narrowing in thought. Then she shifted closer. the faint scent of strange flowers clinging to her armor and let the blanket settle across her shoulders. The nearness of her presence was startling. Evan felt the warmth of her body through the heavy fabric. He listened to her slow, measured breathing. Neither of them spoke. Words seemed too heavy for what passed between them, something quiet, alive, and new. He wanted to ask 100 questions. Where did she come from? Why was she here? Was she alone? But he sensed that the night was not for answers. It was for being, for sharing the small miracle of fire and stars. Rin reached into a pouch at her belt and pulled out a small crystal, no bigger than a pebble, glowing faintly blue. She held it out to him. Evan hesitated, then took it carefully. The crystal pulsed like a tiny heart against his palm. "What is it?" he whispered. Rin only smiled and pressed 2 fingers to her own chest, then to his. A gift, a sign, a connection. He wasn't sure, but the gesture filled him with a quiet awe. The fire burned lower. Evan fed it another branch and leaned back against the rock wall. Rin mirrored his movement. They sat shoulder to shoulder beneath a sky thick with endless stars. He thought of how small he was against that infinite dark. Yet with her beside him, he didn't feel small. He felt important, as if the universe had folded itself so that 2 strangers from different worlds could share one perfect night. Rin turned her head, watching him. The gold in her eyes glimmered softly. She said his name clear this time, gentle. "Evan." It startled him to hear it shaped so well by her voice. He smiled and answered, "Rin." The wind quieted. The fire sighed. Somewhere far above, a faint streak of green light crossed the stars as if marking their meeting in the heavens. In that silent canyon, Evan felt a truth he could not name. Whatever she was, wherever she was from, their lives had already changed. The desert air cooled to a silver stillness as midnight settled over the canyon. The fire's glow had softened to deep orange coals that pulsed like quiet hearts. Evan sat with Rin beneath the spread of endless stars, the borrowed blanket draped across their shoulders. The silence between them felt alive, full of something they both sensed but could not name. Evan studied her face in the low light. The strange shimmer of her blue skin caught every flicker of flame. Her golden eyes held the calm of a deep ocean and the sharp watchfulness of a warrior. He wondered about the worlds behind those eyes, cities that might float above alien seas, skies filled with different constellations, the family she might have left behind. Rin turned her gaze toward him. The faint green glow from her ship painted soft edges along her jaw. Her look was steady, curious, and strangely gentle. She reached out and traced a single finger along the crystal she had given him earlier. The stone still pulsed in his pocket like a living heartbeat. Evan felt the night wrap around them, warm despite the cold air. Words seemed small and unnecessary. He simply whispered, "Beautiful." Not sure if he meant the sky or her. She tilted her head at the sound, then repeated the words slowly, carefully. "Bow. Type. Full." The way she shaped it with her accent made his chest tighten. He nodded, smiling. A faint hum rose from her ship, a distant echo like the ocean in a seashell. Rin looked toward it, then back at him, her eyes reflecting both duty and hesitation. Something in that glance told him her time here was limited. Evan felt a sudden urgency, a quiet ache in his chest. He didn't want this moment to end, not yet. He reached out, his hand stopping a breath away from hers. He waited. Rin watched him with those bright eyes. Slowly, she turned her palm upward and placed it beneath his. Her skin was cool and smooth, almost like polished stone, but the faint pulse beneath it was undeniably alive. A small breath escaped her lips, half sigh, half question. Evan slid closer, careful, giving her every chance to pull away. She did not. Instead, she rested her forehead lightly against his. The gesture was both tender and fierce. A meeting of 2 worlds without a single word. They stayed like that for a long time, listening to the quiet music of the night. The warmth of their joined hands and the slow rhythm of their breaths made the rest of the universe fall away. When she finally drew back, Rin spoke in a soft stream of sounds that Evan couldn't understand but felt in his heart. He answered only with her name, Rin. And she smiled, a rare, luminous smile that lit the canyon more than the fading fire. A sudden gust of cold wind swept through, making her shiver. Evan pulled the blanket tighter around both of them. Their shoulders touched, then their arms, and soon their whole sides pressed together under the heavy fabric. He could feel the steady beat of her heart against his ribs. It was different from a human rhythm, faster and more delicate, yet it blended with his own until he couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Rin tilted her head, searching his face. Her eyes asked a question that needed no translation. Evan answered by leaning in, his lips brushing hers with the lightest touch. She inhaled sharply, then returned the kiss, slow and deliberate, as if learning a language that belonged only to them. The world around them faded to starlight and quiet breath. The scent of the desert, the faint hum of the ship, the warmth of her body, all of it merged into a single moment of connection. Time blurred. There were no words, only touch, and the unspoken understanding that they were both choosing this night here and now, beyond fear or reason. It wasn't hurried or wild. It was gentle, reverent, a conversation of hearts. Later, they lay wrapped together beneath the vast sky. Evan traced the outline of a constellation with his finger while Rin watched silently. She rested her hand over his chest as if listening to the slow, steady beat beneath. He thought of everything that separated them. Light years of distance, the unknown life waiting for her beyond this planet. Yet in that quiet hour, none of it mattered. They were two souls sharing the same breath, the same warmth, the same fragile piece of time. Rin finally spoke a single word in her language, soft and low. Evan didn't know its meaning, but the way she said it filled him with a strange, aching peace. He whispered her name again as if it could anchor her to him. Far off, the sky brightened faintly toward the east. Dawn was beginning to touch the edge of the world. Rin noticed and sat up slowly. Her armor caught the first hint of pale light. Evan felt a sharp pull in his chest. "You have to go," he said quietly, though he knew she wouldn't understand. Still, she seemed to feel the meaning. She touched his cheek with her cool palm. A silent answer. They dressed in silence. Evan folded the blanket, his fingers slow, unwilling to let the night slip away. Rin stood tall, her spear now fixed and gleaming as if it had never been broken. At the foot of her ship's ramp, she turned back to him. The rising sun painted her hair with gold. She stepped close, pressed her forehead to his one last time, and whispered his name perfectly. Evan. Then she climbed the ramp. The craft's surface shimmered to life, casting bright green light across the canyon. With a low, deep hum, it lifted gently from the ground, scattering sand like mist. Evan raised a hand, though he doubted she could see. The ship climbed higher, faster, until it was only a streak of light against the brightening sky. Then it was gone, leaving only silence and the faint warmth of her touch on his skin. Evan stood alone, the empty desert stretching wide around him. The first rays of sun spilled over the rocks, chasing the last stars away. He felt both small and infinite, as if a piece of the universe had reached out to him for one perfect night. He pressed the glowing crystal in his pocket and closed his eyes. Her presence lingered there, soft, steady, alive. Whatever came next, this night would stay with him forever. The desert looked different in daylight. Evan returned to the campsite the next morning after Rin's ship had vanished into the dawn. The sand felt colder beneath his boots than he remembered. The small fire pit lay dark, a circle of gray ash. Only the faint imprint of her boots remained near the rock where they had sat together. He knelt and touched the marks, afraid the wind would soon erase them. He spent a long time there, staring at the wide blue sky. It was hard to believe the night before had been real. The ship, the green light, the gentle weight of Rin's head against his shoulder. All of it might have been a dream if not for the small crystal in his pocket. It still pulsed with a faint blue glow, warm as a living heartbeat. Driving home felt like waking from a story he wasn't ready to leave. The highway stretched empty before him, sun burning across the asphalt. Every few miles he checked the sky, hoping for a flash of green light or the soft hum of her ship. He saw only clouds and birds. Back at his apartment, life waited like an old coat that no longer fit. The walls looked smaller. The hum of the refrigerator felt too loud. He unpacked his bag and placed the crystal on the nightstand. In the dark, it filled the room with a soft blue glow that made ordinary things. His worn boots, a pile of bills, the empty couch, look almost magical. The first week passed in a blur. At work, Evan struggled to focus. Surveying land for new construction projects felt meaningless after touching another world. He found himself staring at the horizon, remembering Rin's voice, the way she had said his name like a song. His co-workers noticed his quiet mood. "You all right, man?" one asked. "Yeah," Evan said with a half-smile. "Just didn't sleep much." Nights were the hardest. He would lie awake and replay every moment. The glow of her skin in the firelight, the warmth of her breath when she whispered unknown words, the feeling of her forehead pressed against his. Sometimes he swore he could still smell the faint floral scent of her hair. He visited the canyon again the next weekend, hiking under a sharp blue sky, but the place felt empty. The stone ledge where they had sat together was just rock and dust. No tracks remained. The silence was different now, less like a friend and more like a question he couldn't answer. Still, he kept the crystal with him. It became a quiet comfort. Sometimes he held it in his palm and felt its faint pulse like it was keeping a memory alive. He wondered if Rin could feel it too, light years away. Weeks turned to a month. Evan tried to return to normal life. He fixed his truck, called his sister, even met friends at a small diner on a Friday night. But every time someone laughed or told a story, he felt a hollow space in his chest. They talked about sports, work, and small-town gossip. He wanted to tell them about the woman with golden eyes who had fallen from the stars. But the words stayed locked behind his teeth. One evening, as he sat on his porch with a cup of coffee, he looked up and whispered to the sky, "Are you out there?" His voice carried into the dark, swallowed by the wind. There was no answer, only the quiet hum of distant traffic and the slow blinking of a lone satellite. Sometimes he dreamed of her. In one dream, she stood on a strange beach with twin moons rising behind her. In another, she floated through a forest of glowing trees, holding their crystal between her palms. He always woke with the feeling that she was near and far at once. The loneliness pressed heavier as the nights grew cooler. He began sketching her ship in a worn notebook. The smooth curves, the green light, the way the metal seemed alive. His pencil could not capture the way it had hummed like a heartbeat. He wrote her name across the top of each page, Rin. One evening in early autumn, Evan drove out to the canyon again. The stars were sharp against the black sky. He built a small fire and sat alone, the crystal in his hand. The desert wind whispered through the rocks. He closed his eyes and listened. "I don't know if you can hear me," he said softly, "but I miss you." The words surprised him, but once spoken they felt right. He thought of the night they had shared, how she had trusted him with her wound, how she had touched his face with such care. He wondered if she had someone waiting for her on another world. He wondered if she thought of him at all. As the fire burned low, he imagined her traveling through endless dark space, strong and fearless. A small part of him worried he might never see her again, that their night together would fade into nothing but memory. Yet another part believed that something had begun between them, something bigger than distance or time. When he finally drove back home, the crystal still glowed in his pocket. He felt its steady pulse and told himself it meant something. Maybe it was just a piece of her technology, maybe only a keepsake, but to him it was a promise. He placed the crystal back on his nightstand before lying down. The soft light filled the room like moonlight on water. Evan closed his eyes and let the steady glow comfort him. Days slipped by. Work remained the same, the world kept moving, and still he waited. He told no one his secret. He didn't expect her to return, yet every night he found himself staring at the stars a little longer, hoping to see a streak of green across the dark. The memory of her touch stayed with him. It was a quiet ache, but also a strange strength. He found himself kinder to strangers, gentler with co-workers, more patient with the small problems of daily life. Rin had shown him something beyond the horizon of Earth, and it had changed him in ways he couldn't explain. Sometimes, when the world felt heavy, he would press the crystal to his chest and whisper her name. The faint pulse beneath his fingers answered like a heartbeat. And so the weeks stretched on, each one carrying the echo of a night that felt as real as the stars above. Evan didn't know what future waited, but he knew the universe had grown wider. Somewhere out there, Rin was living her own story, and in the quiet of his small room, he carried the certainty that their paths were not finished yet. A heavy rain drummed against the roof of Evan's small house, the kind of autumn storm that smelled of wet earth and lightning. He sat by the window with the glowing crystal in his hand, watching water run in silver lines down the glass. Months had passed since that night in the desert, and though he tried to live his normal life, a quiet ache stayed with him. He missed Rin more than he could explain to anyone. The evening sky rumbled with thunder. Evan leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. The crystal pulsed faintly, as if keeping its own rhythm with the storm. He was about to turn off the light when a deep, unfamiliar hum filled the air, low, steady, and powerful enough to vibrate the floor beneath his feet. His eyes snapped open. The sound grew louder, rolling like distant engines. The rain outside shivered against the windows. Evan stood quickly, heart pounding. A strange green glow flickered across the dark yard. For a wild moment he thought it might be a power surge, but the light moved, alive and deliberate. He grabbed his jacket and rushed to the porch. The rain slapped cold against his face. Over the trees at the far edge of his yard, a shape emerged. A sleek craft shimmering in green and silver, descending silently through the storm. Lightning cracked across the clouds, outlining its curved form. Evan's breath caught. He knew that ship. The vessel hovered above the grass, scattering sheets of rain into mist. A soft hum spread through the air like a heartbeat. Slowly, a ramp extended from its underside, glowing pale blue. Evan stepped forward, water soaking through his boots. The rain muffled the world until only the sound of his own pulse remained. The ramp touched the ground with a hiss of steam. A figure appeared at the top, tall, strong, wrapped in a dark cloak that clung to her in the storm. Rin. She walked down the ramp with calm, sure steps, her eyes bright gold even through the falling rain. She no longer wore the heavy battle armor from before. Instead, a soft fabric draped across her shoulders, shimmering faintly with each flash of lightning. In her arms she carried a small bundle wrapped in silver cloth. Evan's breath came short. He took a few steps closer, not trusting his own voice. The rain washed across them, but Rin's eyes never left his. When she finally reached him, she stopped just an arm's length away. For a long heartbeat, neither of them spoke. Only the storm filled the silence. Then Rin said his name, clear, perfect, as if she had been practicing every day. Evan. The sound of it, shaped by her voice, struck something deep inside him. He swallowed hard. Rin, he whispered. Her cloak shifted as she adjusted the bundle in her arms. She looked down at it, then back at him, a softness in her golden gaze that he had never seen before. Slowly, carefully, she pulled back the edge of the silver cloth. A small face peeked out, round cheeks the color of dawn, a faint shimmer to the skin as if touched by starlight. Dark hair curled gently across a tiny forehead, and when the child blinked open its eyes, they shone a bright amber gold that mirrored Rin's, and Evan's own warm brown mixed within. The world seemed to tilt. Evan stared, the rain forgotten. The child looked at him, quiet and curious, as if recognizing something deep inside. His heart thudded so hard it almost hurt. He pointed a trembling finger toward the baby, then toward himself, searching for words. Mine? Rin's eyes softened further. She gave a single, certain nod. Ours, she said, her voice gentle but strong. The word hit him like a wave. Ours. Evan took a shaky step closer. The baby stirred, making a small sound that pierced the steady drum of rain. He reached out a hand, hesitant. Rin lowered the child so that Evan could see better. Tiny fingers flexed in the cool night air, and the sight filled him with an ache he didn't know he carried. He brushed a fingertip against the baby's hand. The small fingers closed around his in a grip surprisingly strong. A warmth spread through him, fear, wonder, and something bigger than both. How? He managed, his voice rough. Rin spoke a string of soft words in her own language, then touched her heart in his. She didn't need to explain the details. The truth was in her eyes. Their one night beneath the stars had created a life. The storm rolled above them, but the rain felt distant now. Evan could hear nothing but the quiet breathing of the child and the steady rhythm of his own heart. Rin stepped closer until they were only inches apart. She shifted the baby into his arms with careful grace. Evan held the small bundle, the weight both fragile and infinite. The child blinked up at him, eyes glowing like a sunset over desert sand. He felt tears mix with the rain on his cheeks. I don't know what to say. Rin lifted a hand to his face, her cool palm against his wet skin. Family, she said slowly, her accent wrapping around the word. Evan closed his eyes, overcome. He thought of all the weeks he had spent staring at the sky, of every lonely night with only the crystal's glow. He thought of how he had doubted she would ever return, and how deep down he had never stopped hoping. The baby made a soft cooing sound, and pressed tiny fingers against his chest. Evan looked down, feeling a warmth he had never known. The storm around them no longer mattered. "You came back," he whispered to Rin. "I come," she answered simply, her golden eyes steady. "For us." The ship behind her hummed, casting green light across the wet grass. Thunder rumbled like a distant drum, but in that moment the world felt perfectly still. Evan stepped forward and wrapped his free arm around Rin. She leaned into him, the three of them a single circle beneath the falling rain. The baby rested quietly between them, a small heartbeat joining theirs. Lightning flared across the clouds, turning the yard bright as day for a breath. Evan felt the weight of the child, the strength of Rin's presence, and the vastness of the universe pressing close around them. He knew nothing of alien customs or what future waited for them. But he knew this. A bond had been forged that no distance could break. Rin looked up at him, a small, fierce smile on her lips. "Together," she said. Evan nodded, tears warm on his cheeks. "Together," he echoed. The storm began to soften, the rain easing to a gentle drizzle. The ship's green light reflected in the puddles like a new constellation on the earth. Under the quiet sky, Evan held his child and met Rin's golden gaze. In that moment he understood that his life had changed forever. The universe had brought them together once more, not by chance but by something far greater. Morning came slow and silver. Mist drifted over the trees and the rain left tiny diamonds on every branch. Evan stood on his porch holding the baby, who slept quietly against his chest. Rin stood a few steps away, watching the horizon as if she carried the weight of many worlds on her shoulders. He looked down at the child's small face. The baby's breath warmed his shirt with each gentle exhale. A strange calm settled over him, a feeling that everything fragile and impossible was still real. Rin turned toward him, the early light catching in her golden eyes. "Evan," she said softly, "I must speak truth." He nodded, heart tightening. "Tell me." She stepped closer, her cloak brushing the wet porch boards. "I did not come only for joy," she said. "My people, they search for me, for our child." Her voice trembled on the last words, though she held her chin high. Evan felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "Search? Why? You left them?" "Yes," she said. "I left battle. I left war. My leaders do not understand peace. They will not bless this union. They will want the child to study, to use." Her hands clenched at her sides. "I will not allow it." The baby stirred and let out a soft cry. Evan tightened his hold, protective instincts surging. "They can't have him," he said, his voice fierce even to his own ears. Rin's gaze softened at his words. "You speak like a warrior," she whispered. "I'm just a man," he answered. "But he's my son. No one takes him from us." She reached out, touching the baby's cheek with a trembling finger. "Our son," she corrected gently. "He is strong. I feel it." Silence wrapped around them for a moment, broken only by the soft morning wind. Evan could see the conflict in her eyes, the pull of loyalty to her people, the fear of what they might do, and the fierce love for the child she carried across the stars. He shifted the baby carefully and reached for her hand. "What do we do?" Rin met his eyes. "I can hide us," she said. "I know places where their ships do not see. But it means no sky travel, no return to your cities for a time." Evan thought of his quiet life, the hardware store job, the few friends who would wonder where he had gone. None of it mattered compared to the life in his arms. "I'll go," he said without hesitation. "Wherever you need. Both of you are my world now." For the first time that morning, a small smile touched her lips. "You would leave all?" "I would leave everything," he said. And he meant it. Rin placed her other hand over his, covering the tiny fist of their child. "Then we are one," she said. The baby stirred again, opening eyes that shone a perfect blend of amber and brown. Evan felt a rush of love so strong it nearly stole his breath. He imagined teaching the boy to walk, to speak, to laugh. He imagined a future where human and alien were not words that divided. Rin lifted her gaze to the sky, scanning the pale morning clouds. "We must move soon," she murmured. "My ship is ready, but I wish to see your world first, to know the place that shaped you." Evan smiled, though worry still pulsed in his chest. "Then we start today. There's a trail through the pines. Quiet, beautiful. No one goes there this early. They set off after a quick meal. The forest glistened with dew, each leaf catching the soft sun. Birds called from hidden branches. Evan carried the baby while Rin walked beside him, her movements graceful but alert. As they climbed a gentle hill, Evan told her about his childhood, how he'd camped in these woods with his father, how the scent of wet pine always felt like home. Rin listened with quiet wonder, sometimes asking questions about the names of trees or the meaning of a bird's call. When they reached the hilltop, the valley opened before them, green and endless under a brightening sky. Rin drew a slow breath, her eyes wide. "Beautiful," she whispered. Evan watched her, not the view. "It's better now," he said. She turned, a faint smile warming her face. "Because we are here together?" "Yeah," he said simply. They stayed for a long time, letting the morning sun dry the last traces of rain. The baby woke and gurgled, waving tiny arms toward the light. Rin laughed, a soft melodic sound that made Evan's heart swell. But the moment of peace was fragile. Rin's eyes kept scanning the sky. Evan noticed and gently touched her arm. "Do you think they're close?" "Perhaps not yet," she said. "But I feel their search, like a shadow on my thoughts." He drew her into an embrace, the baby cradled between them. "We'll stay ahead," he said. "We'll protect him, together." Rin rested her forehead against his. "Together," she echoed. They returned to the house as afternoon stretched across the land. The baby slept again, lulled by the quiet sway of Evan's steps. Rin prepared the ship, checking panels and scanning the sky. Evan packed only what mattered, a few clothes, a photo of his parents, and the small glowing crystal she had once given him. When the sun dipped low, they stood at the edge of the yard. The ship's ramp gleamed in fading light. Evan looked back at his little house, the porch where he'd spent countless lonely evenings, the window where he had waited for a sign. He felt no regret. Rin placed a hand on his shoulder. "This place gave you strength," she said. "Now it gives it to us." He nodded, a lump in his throat. "I'll miss it. But I'd rather have you both than these walls." They boarded the ship as the first stars appeared. Inside, soft lights glowed like captured moons. The engines hummed, steady and alive. Evan strapped in with the baby secured against his chest while Rin moved to the controls. As the ship lifted, the ground fell away. The forest, the river, and the little house became a patchwork of darkness and silver. Evan felt a twist of fear for what lay ahead, but Rin's presence steadied him. She glanced back at him and the child, her eyes warm despite the tension in her jaw. "No matter where we go," she said, "this is home now." Evan looked down at his son, who slept without a care as the stars opened before them. "Home," he agreed softly. The ship angled toward the horizon, carrying them into a wide unknown. The world below faded into night, but inside the cabin, Evan felt a new light grow, a bond of love and courage that no pursuit could break. The stars stretched like endless lanterns beyond the ship's clear window. Evan sat in the quiet cabin, his son asleep against his chest, feeling the gentle thrum of engines through the seat. Rin stood at the controls, her silhouette outlined by soft blue light. Hours had passed since they left Earth's atmosphere, but Evan still felt the pull of his home far below. He thought of the forest, the small porch, the smell of rain. Yet when he looked at the baby's tiny face, a deeper truth settled inside him. Home was no longer a place. It was these two hearts beside him. Rin turned from the controls and came to his side. "He sleeps like starlight," she said quietly. Evan smiled. "Like he knows the universe is his cradle." Rin lowered herself next to them. For a while they just listened to the ship's gentle hum. The baby's breathing blended with the sound, steady and calm. But peace was fragile. A soft chime sounded on the console, an alert. Rin's posture stiffened. She crossed the cabin in 3 swift steps and read the display. Evan's chest tightened. "What is it?" Her golden eyes narrowed. "A patrol," she said. "My people's signal. Far but near enough to find us if we stay." Fear pricked at Evan's thoughts. "Can we outrun them?" Rin's fingers danced over the controls, checking coordinates. "Yes," she said after a moment, though her voice carried a hard edge. "But they will follow if they see our trail." Evan looked at his son. The child stirred, sensing the tension. "Then let's not give them a trail," he said firmly. Rin turned to him, her expression softening despite the danger. "You are brave," she whispered. "I'm a father," he replied. A small smile flickered across her face. We hide in the Veil Nebula, she said. Its clouds confuse scanners, but we must pass through a belt of storms. It will shake the ship. Do it, Evan said. The engines deepened in tone as she plotted the course. The ship angled sharply, stars smearing into streaks of light. The baby whimpered at the sudden motion. Evan held him close, murmuring gentle words until the child quieted again. Outside, a faint violet haze appeared, growing brighter as they approached. Waves of color shimmered across the view, blue, pink, and green like a living ocean of light. Rin guided the ship into the swirling clouds. Static danced across the hull and the cabin trembled with a deep rumble. Evan felt the vibration in his bones, but he focused on his son's calm face, on Rin's steady hands. The ship shuddered as a bright flare burst outside. Magnetic storm, Rin said, voice level. Hold fast, a sudden jolt rocked them. Alarms flickered. The baby cried out and Evan tightened his grip, heart pounding. Almost through, Rin said. Her fingers flew over the controls, eyes sharp and focused. A final surge of light wrapped the ship, blinding for an instant, and then silence. The shaking ceased. The alarm stilled. Through the window lay a quiet sea of soft violet mist, glowing like a dream. We are hidden, Rin said at last, exhaling. Evan let out a long breath and kissed the top of his son's head. Good, he whispered. Rin came to sit beside him, her face bathed in the nebula's gentle glow. Your courage saved us, she said. He shook his head. We saved each other. The baby settled again, tiny fingers clutching at Evan's shirt. Rin reached to stroke the child's hair, her touch tender. He is strong, she said. A bridge between worlds. Evan looked at her, wonder filling his chest. Do you think our people could ever accept that? That we belong together? Rin met his gaze, eyes reflecting the nebula's light. Some will fear, she said. Some will fight. But love is stronger than fear. In time they will see, he wanted to believe her. He looked out at the swirling colors, imagining a future where their son could walk on both Earth and her homeworld without hiding. Then we'll teach him, Evan said quietly. To be both. To be whole. Rin rested her head on his shoulder. Yes, we teach him love. We show him courage. He will change more than we can see. They stayed like that for a long while, wrapped in the nebula's light. The baby slept again, small and perfect, a heartbeat between two distant species. After some time, Rin rose and fetched a small crystal from a compartment. It glowed faintly like the one she'd given him months ago. She placed it in his palm. This is for our son, she said. When he is old enough, he will know where he came from. Both worlds, both hearts. Evan closed his fingers around the crystal, feeling its gentle warmth. Thank you, he said, for trusting me, for coming back. I could not stay away, she replied simply. You are part of me now. Emotion swelled in his chest. And you are part of me, he said. They watched the violet clouds drift past the window. Beyond them, faint stars glittered like promises. Evan whispered to his son, No matter where we go, you will always know you are loved. By me, by her, by the sky itself. Rin smiled softly, understanding the words without needing them translated. The ship floated in silence, cradled by the nebula. Evan felt no fear of the future. He felt only the weight of the child in his arms and the warmth of Rin's presence. The universe was wide and full of unknowns, but their small family was strong. Rin placed a hand over his, the crystal glowing between their palms. Together, she said. Evan met her gaze and echoed the word that had carried them from the desert to the stars. Together, outside the nebula shimmered like a new dawn. Inside, three hearts beat as one, carrying the quiet certainty that love, human and alien, was greater than any distance, any fear, any war. They had crossed worlds to find each other. Now they would build a future no one had dared to imagine, and somewhere deep in the endless sky the stars seemed to brighten, as if the universe itself approved.